Hey there, it's Gary Parrish. Welcome back to the CBS Sports Eye on College Basketball Podcast, where we sometimes discuss camel fighting, dodo birds, leaky black. Matt Norlander is here with me. If you're watching on YouTube, you know what to do to the like button. Shouts to Brandon Davies. And if you're not yet subscribed to the CBS Sports College Basketball YouTube channel, please also do that while you're here. Let's get into it. Big headline this morning from our friend Adrian Wojnarowski. The Los Angeles Lakers are targeting UConn coach Dan Hurley to become the franchise's next head coach and are, according to Woj, preparing a massive long-term contract offer to bring the back-to-back national champion to the NBA. Norlander, I'll hand it over to you. Thoughts when you wake up and see that this morning?
Yeah, it's well, let me listen outside. Hold on, the streets of Connecticut here. It's quiet. It's quiet out there, GP.
For now.
The folks might be in some mourning right now, or they're prepping for doomsday here in the Nutmeg State. Okay, so how about this? So I saw the headline, and honestly, we both know that Woj has a relationship with the Hurleys. He wrote a book about his father, and so part of this from the reporting end of it, I don't know this to be fact, but this is my own speculation. I almost wonder, does this report get out there without any kind of clearance on the Hurley family side? Keep in mind, Dan Hurley is also in the midst, or has been in the midst, of restructuring a contract with UConn as all this is going down. It's a biggie. It makes sense after the fact, but there hadn't been any noise about the Hurley stuff to the Lakers that I had heard. Although, according to Woj's report, this had kind of been privately their target for a bit, and then the discussions in the past 48 hours began to ramp up there. It's intriguing. At this hour, as we record this podcast, I'm not convinced he will go if he is offered. Again, the framing of the report is that the Lakers are rallying to prepare to offer Dan Hurley a massive contract, many years, a lot of money, to get him to leave UConn. The reporting at this hour is not that he is set to leave UConn to take the Lakers job. Those are two very different things. That status could change later on today, but that's not where we're at in terms of Woj's reporting at this hour. On the UConn front, all is very, very quiet, which only indicates that this is extremely true at this moment. And in terms of the fallout with UConn, we can get to that either later in the show or hell, maybe tomorrow, whenever we need to update this story. Big picture, is it worth it for Dan Hurley to do this? I want your thoughts and opinion, GP, because the two most recent coaches to win back-to-back national championships in men's Division I college basketball are Billy Donovan and Mike Krzyzewski. Billy Donovan was convinced eventually to go and coach in the NBA, and since he's done that, it's been good. Hasn't been great for sure. Hasn't been terrible. It's been good. Mike Krzyzewski, coincidentally enough, 20 years ago this year, turned down the Lakers job when he got really close to the finish line, but ultimately couldn't stomach leaving Duke and being a college coach and chasing all of that stuff. And lo and behold, Krzyzewski went on to win 2 more national championships and is arguably the best coach in the history of the sport. It only makes sense for Hurley to be courted like this. He never, ever seriously considered the Kentucky job, but it is the Lakers, and it is a little bit different. And this does harken back, and I said this on HQ just a few moments ago. I remember talking to Brad Stevens shortly after he took the Celtics job back in 2013. And I am paraphrasing after the fact, and he basically said, it would have been hard for me to ever leave Butler for another college job, but it's the Boston Celtics, and you have to listen. And this is the Los Angeles Lakers, and you have to listen. I have many other thoughts, but I'm not going to monologue here. I want your thoughts on the prospect of this happening and how surprised you are that the Lakers, after a lot of buzz and noise about J.J. Redick being the front runner and other reports there, where you land on this whole story on this Thursday morning, GP. Well, and by the way, great to be back with you. It's been a minute since we podcast.
I know we've had trouble connecting in recent weeks, but we're here now. It's good to see you. That's the other part of this is there's like a media story happening here as well, because Shams was the one that was out in front with the J.J. Redick stuff. And Woj, I think for the most part, stayed away from that.
Yeah.
And then he drops this, and there's these little subtle lines in the story that what.
Hold on, not only drops it, Woj dropped like a 1,400-word newser.
Yes,
yes. This was not. Hey, I got to file this real quick. Here's 3 paragraphs. Let's get it up. This thing could have been the postscript to the Miracle at St. Anthony's. I couldn't help but notice that as well.
Yeah, he'd been working on this for a couple of days. I would assume. I want to be clear. Like Woj and I are friends, close, but I have not talked to him about this. So I don't want to imply that like I know when I say things like he's been working on this for a couple of days. I don't want to imply that I know that. But yes, it was a very lengthy, detailed, well-reported news story. And there's these little subtle things in there like Reddick has always been at the that is exactly what it appears to be. So that's interesting. Undeniably, there's truth to this. As you noted, Woj has a long and great relationship with the entire Hurley family. The dynamics of that are interesting because, as you know, sometimes it's really great to be close to somebody who is the centerpiece of a news story because, like, that's your guy. On the other hand, in times like these, it can be complicated because it's like, hey, not yet. They're constantly telling you not yet. Don't get it out there yet. Let me. And then it's like you think somebody else is going to get it. You don't want to get scooped on it. Like I guarantee you, those are conversations. So as for what will Dan do, I don't know. I can understand anything. I hate to sound like a broken record, but I feel it's important to say this all the time. At one point in my career when I was younger, used to think I could analyze any situation and tell you exactly what this person should do. This coach should stay or go. This player should stay or go. I know what's best for everybody. As you get older and you start making your own career decisions and life decisions, you realize that what matters to you doesn't matter to other people and vice versa. And projecting your values or desires onto other people is often just a huge waste of time. I've made career choices that wouldn't line up with what other people would do, and others have done the same, and that's the way life works. So I'm not here to judge Dan Hurley in either direction or insist I know what he should do, but I can understand why he would be interested in this. And I do think if I were him, buddy, it would be a hard thing to turn down. He just won back-to-back national championships. He's obviously amazing. The landscape of college basketball and college athletics is obviously changing. He's made it clear on social media he's not a big fan of the transfer portal. We just had a big development in college athletics where the SEC and the Big Ten and the ACC and the Big 12 are going to start having a lot more money to throw at NIL than schools in leagues without major college football. It doesn't mean it's impossible for UConn to stay at the tip top of the sport, but without big time football and the money that comes with that, it can be challenging, right? So you contrast all that with it's the Los Angeles Lakers, it's Southern California. I'll take the reporting as it stated, a long-term and massive contract and commitment. So then you go, all right, let's play it out both ways. If it goes well, what happens? If it goes well, you're like the 2-time national championship coach who's now running the Lakers, and now that's going well. You're the biggest thing in coaching, perhaps, at any level of the sport. So that's obvious. That's great. You're living in Southern California. You're coaching the Lakers. This is amazing, given where you were just a few years ago. It's amazing, regardless of the context. If it doesn't go well, what happens? You get fired in a few years. You take all of that money that is guaranteed, and you take best college job available wherever that is at the time, just like Rick Pitino once did, just like John Calipari once did. So, listen, Andrea, his wife, is going to have to be a part of this conversation. This is a family decision.
That's putting it lightly, by the way.
Right. So
let's loop in Andrea at some point. Andrea, come on in the living room. Let's talk about.
I mean, you ready for this? It could be as simple as Dan Hurley says, "It's my dream to coach in the NBA, and my God, it's the NBA's all-time scoring leader, and it's the Los Angeles Lakers." And Andrea just says, "Life is good. Let's not mess with it." All right. Now we're in a situation. I mean, I turned down a job one time a long time ago that I would have never turned down except for it was not the right time for me and
it
my
was
family.
the Lakers in 2004. People don't realize that. It was Krzyzewski was one. He turned it down. GP was next, and then they went the way they went. Yeah, people don't realize that.
A long time. Well, even before I was at CBS Sports, I want to be clear. I turned down a job that I would have never turned down, except for I knew it wasn't good for my wife. I knew it would not be a good thing for our family, and I turned that down. So sometimes now it wasn't a Lakers contract offer. I want to be clear. If they'd have put $100 million on the table, I'd have been like, you know what? Come with me, stay, whatever. But I can't turn this down. But my point is that that Andrea will have a voice in this, and she should. So I don't know what he's going to do. I could understand any decision, but man, this is obviously a hard thing to turn down. Not to put any franchise down, but like this isn't the Kings job or the Hornets job, or the Magic job. This is the Lakers. This is a big deal.
I'm interested. I'd be interested to know. I mean, to state the obvious here, I've reached out to Dan Hurley this morning, have not heard back. So.
The funniest one of those, by the way, and I'll be real quick on this, because you always like reach out to these people.
You have to,
just if for no other reason than just to go on CBS Sports HQ and say I did, right? So one time I forget who it was, but there was a tweet came across or something, and it was like Lon Kruger is in negotiations to be the next head coach or is like maybe going to be the next head coach at Oklahoma. Leaving UNLV.
Yeah.
And I was just like, oh, I guess I'll just call Lon. I was honest to God just calling him so that I could put in the story. Attempts to reach Lon Kruger were unsuccessful. And he like it rings and he goes, hello? Lon? Hey, Gary. Hey, I'm just checking in with you about there's a report that you're going to Oklahoma. Oh yeah, that's true. It was just like it was never before had something like that happened. Never since had anything like that.
You told me that, and I want to say, you might have forgotten the details all these years. I want to say you called his home number. I don't even think you called his cell, but I could be wrong.
It was something like that. I don't remember. It was something where I genuinely, like, I don't know if you do this, but I have done this before. I'm going to make this phone call or send this text. I'm not expecting anything. I just need to be able to say that I did it. Yeah. And that's all I was doing. And he was like, hey, GP.
Yeah, for sure. I'd be interested to see how he feels about this story being out there as much as it is right now, because this does put more public pressure, obviously, on UConn to get something done as soon as possible. There hadn't been an update. In fact, I think coincidentally enough, Dave Borges, who does a great job covering UConn locally and has for a long, long time, part of the Horde, he talked to Hurley on Wednesday night in Stamford, which if you don't know Stamford, Connecticut, if you know the tongue at the bottom of Connecticut, Stamford's near the bottom of the tongue, one of the bigger cities in the state. He was down there for something or other, and actually, coincidentally enough, talked about his contract situation and why it had not gotten done yet and all that kind of stuff. There's a lot of things here. I've seen John Beilein now mention the chat, I think, a couple of times. Yes, he is the most recent instance of He's the most recent instance of a high major college coach going to the NBA, unless I'm blanking early here on a Thursday morning, GP. And that's you want the worst case scenario. It's that. I mean, John Beilein was considered and understandably so, rightfully so, among the smartest college coaches we had, particularly from a tactician standpoint. And, the way that he approached practices and games and everything, he just seemed like, all right, if you're going to take someone from the college ranks and put him in the NBA, he was older than Hurley is now. Hurley's 51. You thought it might work. It went to the Cavs. It was a complete disaster, and it just imploded in practically no time. So if you want the worst case scenario, GP laid it out before. It's more that, like, you go to the Lakers, it doesn't work whatsoever. You're nowhere near competitive in making the playoffs, and then you've soiled a little bit of your coaching reputation by doing it, but you might want to take the chance there, regardless.
And let me just inject real quick, and then I'll turn it back.
Yeah.
I hear what you're saying, but the history of college coaches going to the NBA is that even if you fail in the NBA, it does not impact your reputation as a college coach at all. You come back.
I'd say that's fair. Yes.
Like Rick Pitino, it didn't matter. John Calipari, it didn't matter. It's weird. If you fail at the collegiate level, you have a hard time getting a job at the collegiate level, like the one you just failed at. But you can fail in the NBA and get a bigger job than you've ever had.
Yeah, no doubt. A lot of thoughts off of this stuff. One, we've already had more coach. Like, if we do have Hurley leave, it would be the nice 69th coaching change in men's Division I this cycle. That we're already at a record. We have never had this many coaching changes in 1 year. In fact, because of the size of Division I college basketball, I think this is the most coaching turnover we've ever had in 1 year in the history of American sports. Hurley leaving would really just, I mean, come on now. It's already been a profound cycle of turnover this year and really over the past 3 years when you look at the amount of coaches at big-time programs, notable coaches, Hall of Famers, and even shy of that, really, really well-known, accomplished coaches. The sport has never undergone so much coaching change in a 3-year period, let alone this year. This would really just further emphasize the impact and the changes in the game and how they are affecting who is running these programs. And Hurley, if he does opt to leave for the Lakers job, would be the latest and one of the greatest. It wouldn't be the greatest. Mike Krzyzewski retaring, Roy Williams retiring. Those are the greatest ones in that realm there. But there's a lot to consider. This is one of many parts. Like Alex Karaban opting to come back is not an insignificant thing. If Alex Karaban knew that Dan Hurley was going to go and coach the NBA, guess what? Alex Karaban would also be off to the NBA. Dan Hurley staying and being the coach there and going for 3 titles in a row was a significant part of Karaban, because I'll repeat what I said on a recent show. I do believe he would have been drafted. Now, he might not have been drafted in the first round, but Alex Karaban, based on people I talked to, high degree of confidence he would have gone somewhere. It might have been 40 to 60, but would have been drafted, and you don't have Hurley on campus, like he would have gone. So now you got to have those kind of conversations. Karaban, while the entire UConn roster would have 30 days now if Hurley were to leave to go into the portal, Karaban, unless there's an obscure rule that got changed recently I'm unaware of, he can't then opt to go back into the draft. Whether there should be a rule that's there for these ultra rare occurrences, I don't know. Maybe up to other people to decide, but that's not on the table for him. And I do think that's significant. There's been some stuff out there about LeBron James and him crediting Hurley's offense and all that kind of stuff. And look, he's already been endorsing Hurley, unwittingly earlier this year. And there's something to that. I'll also point out, as I did on HQ, that it's as much Hurley's offense as it is Luke Murray's. And the two of them really combined last off season to overhaul and run what was one of the most dynamic, and frankly, it was the most unstoppable team, and then the offense within that in the sport. I can't help but wonder if Hurley leaving also would mean that he'd take Luke with him, because why wouldn't you in that point? Kamani Young, would he be the one that then slides in to be the interim head coach, the full-time head coach? You want to keep this roster together? You're going to have to promote from within, but would you still lose players? I mean, probably. Would you go on the open market? These are things that are kind of lingering and wondering out there from a public standpoint, but make no mistake about it. Like in the halls of UConn right now, and with that athletic director, Dave Benedict, he's going to need to decide before even knowing if Dan Hurley is going to leave to take the Lakers job. Am I promoting Kamani, or am I going to have to go and see like who would take this job, and how do I keep this thing going? Because UConn is operating as the best program in the sport. And I do think that Hurley talking about, like, it has been in practically every bit of media availability Hurley has had since he stepped onto the platform on the court in Glendale, Arizona, about winning 3 in a row and going for the three-peat. He was on, I mean, he's been on, as you and I have talked, like, he's been not shy about being on social media with a lot of stuff. He was on it as recently as yesterday with a lot of this stuff. So there's a lot there. He's from the Northeast. This is a drastic life change, which isn't to say it can't happen or won't happen. But if you told me that Hurley wanted to go, decided to go, but his wife was like, not doing it, then it wouldn't happen. I'd believe you the whole way. And he wouldn't like run from that either. Like, and it's completely understandable. And many more coaching decisions get made for things like that than people might realize there. But this is a fascinating one, and it has a big impact on the sport next season, by the way, because let's say you take Hurley off of UConn and everyone else magically stays, which won't happen. But even with that, I mean, they're not going to be considered to be a title contender, even with the same roster. That's how valuable Hurley is. And oh, by the way, to speak the obvious, like, he is a big face of the sport, ambassador for the sport, is now the best coach in the sport right there, along the likes of, say, a Bill Self. And I don't know if it's as easy, Parrish, as saying, well, his reputation in college will be the same no matter what. That's true, but he's ultra competitive, and knowing Hurley and how he operates, like he might want to take on the challenge, but it won't sit well with him if he fails. Like it'll drive him mad. And also he's going to have to, I mean, this is one of the biggest things here. He can't run the Lakers the same way he has run UConn. Like he will for the NBA, it would be a great thing in that you'd have a coach who is more demonstrative than the other 29 combined.
Right.
Like, some of that will have to change. And the way that like he runs a program and who he is and how he runs a practice and how he powers over a program, the dynamic flips. Can he do that? Does he want to do it? How can he adjust? How long will it take to adjust? Fascinating development here. I don't know what he's going to do. I'm not going to sit here and predict on the pod, by the way, he's going to do one thing or the other. This feels 50-50, but it doesn't seem like an automatic to me that he will go if offered. And if he does go if offered, I think it will be a grueling decision because he is in the perfect place at the perfect time at the best moment of his life professionally right now. And I know it means a ton to him to try and at least win 3 in a row, as tough and unlikely as that might be.
I actually think this is the type of decision that no matter what you do, you wonder forever if you did the right thing.
There's something to that.
It's so tough. I mean, you dream of being in this position, and then it is agonizing if you're in this position because, I mean, man, it's just you are either changing your life dramatically or passing up on an amazing opportunity. There's no in between. And so I'm with you. It's not clear cut to me what he should do. It's not clear cut to me what I would do if I were him. It's not clear to me the role Andrea will play in it, but she will play one, and she should. As for what UConn should do if Dan does leave, I would strongly look at promoting from within. Like that program has been running like the best program in America. And though Dan is the face of it and the biggest part of it, it would be silly. I think even Dan would agree with this to not acknowledge that Kamani and Luke, at the very least, have played a big role in this. And I've known both those guys. I like both of those guys. They're both going to be Division I head coaches someday, sooner rather than later. I can't tell you who the administration would think is better equipped to run that program. But if I thought either one of those guys was the next guy, that's what I would try to do. But if I didn't believe in either one of them, then I wouldn't. But if I would not. Ohio State just hired a first-time head coach. You can do it at UConn too, particularly with what those guys have helped Dan accomplish. I want to circle back to what Dan would look like in the NBA, because you're exactly right. He's a brilliant basketball mind and an amazing basketball coach. That's inarguable. I think this is also inarguable. You cannot approach the job and do the job the way that he's been doing the job at UConn. It's just, walking onto the court in the middle of a championship game to kind of stare down Zach Edey.
Oh no, and he literally pushed Cam Spencer.
Okay, like you're not you're not gonna be able to walk on the court and stare down Nikola Jokic, because then like Jokic's brothers are coming out of the crowd and you got a whole problem, right? Yeah. So Dan is smart enough to know that. Just like I promise you, if John Calipari had ever gone back to the NBA, he would not have coached the same way that he subsequently coached at Memphis and Kentucky, or that he previously coached like at UMass or with the Nets. He knows that his in-your-face yelling demeanor did not work, but he didn't know it in advance. Dan's smart enough to know that going into it. The question becomes, like, even if you know it, is that enough? I mean, we all have these things, and maybe we all don't, but I know I do. There are things I remind myself of every day. Like I go, hey, no matter what happens today, not get mad about this little thing. It's not that big of a deal. And like, you just got to let it roll off, and it's not that big of a deal. Life's good. And you got a tea time, and don't, your kids are healthy, and be appreciative, and don't get caught up on this little stuff. And 20 minutes later, I'm like wanting to punch my desk. All right. I can't help it. And then that moment passes. It passes quickly, but I still, in the moment, I get frustrated, and I can't, even if I know, I mean, I could tell myself 20 times, do not get frustrated by this. But when it happens, I get frustrated. Sometimes being smart enough to know how you need to react isn't even enough, because you just can't help it in those moments. I'm not speaking to Dan on that. I know, and I'm not telling secrets because he's talked about this open. He's worked on himself a lot. Like,
yeah,
really,
Big story on it when his final year at Rhode Island. That was like 6-7 years ago on that. And he has changed. He has progressed some, but it's not all. He is who he is. And
he is who he is, right? And so you can say, I know I can't do A, B, and C, but when you're in those moments, can you stop yourself from doing A, B, and C? Sometimes I'm not strong enough to do it. I don't want to speak for Dan, but like that's a part of this as well.
It is. Would have to expect that Hurley has a very good relationship, a close relationship with Billy Donovan. So multiple conversations. If you told me that Hurley was waking Billy up at 6:15 in the morning, by the way, to talk it out, I'd believe you the whole way there. I also, a quote from Rick Pitino from earlier this year has been rattling around my head this morning, in that he said if he could go back and do it all over again, he would not have taken the Celtics job. He would have stayed at Kentucky. He has regrets about doing it. Now you live it, you know it after the fact, but but that is also, there's a thing with that. And Hurley and Pitino obviously know each other. And Hurley is not going to simply enclose himself only with his family and his staff and make that decision, and his AD and make that. That's not what's going to happen. He has a number of people that he knows across basketball, and Billy is one of them. He will seek the heaviest counsel from, obviously his brother as well. And if you told me you talked to Pitino, amongst plenty of others, there'd be something with that as well. And for Pitino to have said, I wish I just had never left Kentucky and never taken the Celtics job. Now, has it affected Rick Pitino's legacy as a college basketball coach? I would argue yes, actually. Because if he didn't, I think there was while you might still consider him to be like the greatest college that's not universally accepted. Sure. Like Pitino is not, he is not on the level of Wooden, Mick Cronin, or Mike Krzyzewski right now. He's not there. However, had he not left for the Celtics and either stayed at Kentucky forever or stayed at Kentucky till its course ran out and then he went and took another job, it wouldn't have been Louisville, you wouldn't think, in that, but whatever, and had kind of done a lot of the same. There is actually a scenario where he would be considered the greatest coach of all time, in my opinion, had he won 5 or 6 national championships. It didn't happen that way. And so as Hurley seeks counsel, I can't help but wonder on all that stuff. And also, talking to Jim Calhoun, Hurley's actually in the position, which is wild to think about. And I don't hear this talked about a lot because maybe he's still so early into his UConn tenure. Jim Calhoun is the greatest coach in the history of the University of Connecticut, men's basketball, obviously. On the women's side, Gino Auriemma, coincidentally, and Hurley and Auriemma share the same agent, so he's been busy as of late. He just signed a new 5-year contract there. Hurley has the opportunity, if he stays, to really, he's already an all-time great, don't get me wrong, but to get on Calhoun's level, he's got to win another one to equal him in national titles there. So it's an intriguing decision that sits ahead of him there, because he right now he's operating like the best. He's going to the Hall of Fame regardless, no matter what. He's won back-to-back national championships. Dan Hurley will ultimately be inducted into the Naismith Memorial Basketball Hall of Fame, but let's see what he decides to do. If he leaves, obviously it's just massive ripple effects for college basketball next season, and kind of also big picture, and would get us one more closer to 70 coaching changes this season, which is already a huge number.
Let me add this, then we'll move on. Because you're right. I think there is a scenario Rick Pitino never leaves Kentucky, and he is the all-time winningest coach in Division I men's basketball history. Yeah. He's got the titles to match Krzyzewski or even exceed him, and he is the GOAT of college basketball coaching. So to be clear, if I wasn't clear earlier, when you leave college basketball, you do miss out on opportunities to accomplish things in college basketball that can, add to your Wikipedia page and further your legacy. What I mean when failing in the NBA doesn't harm you, what I mean is that if you are the coach at, say, UConn, all right, let's not even use Dan because that's not a good example. Let's say you're a coach at a middle of the pack SEC program, and then you get a better job and you take that one. If you fail at that one, you're going to have a hard time getting another comparable job. It's just the way it works. But if you leave UConn or any job in college basketball for the NBA, almost no matter what happens in the NBA, you can come back to college and people will just evaluate you as a college basketball coach based on what you did in college. In other words, had Billy Donovan just bombed out in the NBA after 2 years and said, all right, coming back to college, who wants me? The best job available would have wanted him, and somebody with a better job would have probably been willing to fire their coach just to go get it. And the same would be true for Dan Hurley. Dan Hurley can, whatever happens with the Lakers, unless it is like some big controversy where he really damages himself, If it's just basketball, hey, man, coaching the NBA is hard. Most people get fired, some guys get fired twice, in a span of 3 years. This is hard stuff. He'd come back to college at any moment, and whatever you tell me the best job available is, I'll tell you that school is willing to hire Dan Hurley. And I can tell you there's probably 3 other schools that if Dan Hurley said, I'll be your coach, they'll fire their coach to get it.
True. And not to say that Dan couldn't go anywhere. I get it. We've been vamping on him maybe, but it's big news, folks. What do you want from us? There is a lot of legitimacy and credence to him being a Northeast guy. It's why Kentucky was prepared to offer him just a ridiculous amount of money, and he never seriously considered it because he had no interest in leaving one blue blood program for another in the neighborhood where he's most comfortable in. So if he were to go and if it were not work out with the Lakers, not to say he couldn't get almost any job that came open on the market, but the one that he would want for him, like he's never going to coach in the middle of the Midwest. He's never going to go coach in the Pacific Northwest. He's never going to go coach in the heart of Texas. It's just not going to happen. So the opportunities for him on the backer come back around might not be as plentiful for him as what he desires there. But that's multiple ifs, whens, maybes. How does this go? Hopefully it's here Thursday morning. I'd love nothing more than for you and I have a resolution by end of day, business day on Friday. But we'll see if we get there. Now that this is out there and it's that public, we'll see how long this takes to get resolved on it. I would say today would be surprising, but hopefully by tomorrow. If not, you would think by Monday or Tuesday.
Yeah, like the Woj's reporting is that it's expected to escalate. I don't think that's the word he used, but intensify. Like the conversations are about to enhance over the coming days. Yeah. So the reporting seemed to suggest if you're looking for something in advance of game 1 of the NBA Finals, that's probably not what we're going to get. But perhaps something, by Friday.
The finals start tonight.
Yeah, NBA game 1.
I had forgotten the season wasn't over, to be honest. So that's good to know. Last thing, we can move on. Also, like you're coaching the Lakers and you're going to coach LeBron James. How long? LeBron going to be there 1 more year, 2 years, 3 years? Like you're taking the job based on what it's going to be beyond the LeBron era and everything that comes with it. But obviously he's the centerpiece moving forward there. A lot to unpack with this whole thing.
All right. Moving on. There have been a few other interesting developments in the sport since we last talked on Tuesday. 2 headlines connected to Kansas. We'll get to that next. But first, a word from our partners.
There's some new players in town, and they brought the plague.
You got my attention. You don't want that. Welcome to Kingstown.
Mayor of Kingstown. New season now streaming exclusively on Paramount Plus.
2 headlines connected to Kansas earlier this week. One, sophomore guard Elmarko Jackson has torn his patella tendon. Recovery time, 12 months. He's going to miss the entire 2024-25 season. That stinks. Not long after that news surfaced, Mississippi State transfer Shaquille Moore announced a commitment to the Jayhawks. So KU lost 1 player, gained another. It might be, and I'd be interested to get your opinion on this, a net negative. But even if it is, in my opinion at least, not enough of a net negative to make me move Kansas from the number 1 spot in the top 25. And what do you say?
You're not going to move him. Have you decided or no?
I've decided I'm not moving him.
Okay. Interesting.
I mean, I'm not saying I won't move them forever. I'm just saying, based on these developments, I'm not moving.
I think we've got a good, healthy debate on our hands in the coming months about who should be the number 1 team, and that's needed. I hate when there's a near consensus, and I'm not convinced Kansas should be number 1. It will be in the mix for that. This, by the way, it was a trade essentially between Mississippi State and Kansas. Now the trains came in on different times and different days, but Riley Kugel was committed to Kansas, and now he's going to play at Mississippi State. And Shaquille Moore is from Mississippi State. He's going to go to Kansas. Shaquille Moore last season, if you were unaware, averaged 7.9 points, 2.2 rebounds, and he's just he's a supplementary piece there. Elmarko Jackson averaged 4.3 points. I expected him to be improved as a sophomore. He was not the level of impact freshman as I think many expected. I remember seeing him on the recruiting circuit, loved his potential and still do. That's a major bummer for him. He actually wound up hurting himself while Kansas was running, I think, some of its camps there. And it's a real ding for him. So I do think ultimately you get more, you lose Elmarko. I would say slight downtick overall. Kansas obviously still has a very, very good roster, and Bill Self is going to I mean, come into this season, I think he's motivated every season, folks. Don't get me wrong. But after the frustration with everything last season, if you're a Kansas fan, you got to be thrilled because there's real potential for you to be among the most successful programs in the sport next season. But I mean, you rank them number one. I'm good. In fact, I think fewer people are ranking Kansas number one. So you being, maybe a voice in the minority there is good. I want diversity of thought, but that's a ding. I thought Jackson could be among the more notable risers among sophomores in the country this season, and now he's not going to have that chance. And his timeline for college progression gets set back significantly as a result of this injury.
Yeah, if you just look at who was the better player last season, I think you could make the argument that Shaquille Moore was a better player than Elmarko Jackson, if only because Elmarko Jackson, like you said, 4.3 points per game, 26.7% from three. He started 17 games, mostly early, and then his playing time really took a hit with the emergence of Johnny Furphy. He was a disappointing freshman, but he was a top 20 prospect in the class of 2023. All the accolades, McDonald's All-American, expected to be a rotation piece once again as a sophomore. He's a little bigger than Shaquille Moore. So disappointing, sure, but you can have a breakthrough. Breakthrough sophomore seasons are real things, and losing him matters. With Moore, you get a guy who started 22 games last season at Mississippi State, who has started 68 games over the past 4 years, began his career at NC State, and then previous 3 seasons at Mississippi State, 170 steals in 124 games at the high major level. So he's a plus perimeter defender, but a little smaller than Elmarko Jackson. Again, I think it's a net negative, but not enough to make me move Kansas out of the top spot of the top 25 and 1. Bill Self had said, I think within the past week, that he wanted to add one more starting caliber player. Presumably that guy was Shaquille Moore, because this had been I know in the order in which the headlines came, it was like, oh, they lost this guy and they got this guy, but they were getting this guy even before they lost that guy.
Yeah, that's just a coincidence and how that all broke down and happened there.
So I wonder, I guess is what I'm asking you. If Bill Self said, say within the past week, before this injury happened, I'd like to add one more guy, does he still want to add one more guy?
It's a good question.
They went into a scholarship limit thing too. Because Elmarko Jackson, he's going to stay on scholarship even though he will not play.
That's correct. It probably wouldn't hurt, to be honest. Yeah, ultimately, especially after what you went through last year, so you can understand why there might be a desire to not find yourself in that situation, because it was a thing that constantly was impacted by, without a doubt. In fact, it reached the point where I Self was just considering, because I talked to him. I wound up not reporting on it because it didn't wind up servicing there, but he was trying to figure out a way to maximize his team, almost like with hockey like shifts. Like, okay, if I can play all of my starters for 36 and a half minutes together, and then can I overcome taking them all off the floor to give them all a breather and play the rest of the group guys for 3.5 minutes. I encouraged him to do it because I wanted to write about it and never got there, but it was a fascinating thing because he was acknowledging and aware of the fact of something we talked about last season when they just did not have the reserves, the deployments to survive it. It wound up catching up with them, and they obviously didn't make it to the second week of the tournament, and they didn't get a top 3 seed in the tournament. So, or even a top, were they the 4 or the 5? I feel like they were the 4. Gonzaga was the 5. Anyway, that was notable, unquestionably. Shaquille Moore, nice little piece. Losing Elmarko Jackson is the bigger news there, and not having him, they can overcome it. But man, you just don't. As a coach, you don't want to lose a guy who you have such big visions for and can be a real mover on your team, in ways like this, and kind of stagnate his growth. So that's a major bummer.
Elsewhere in the sport, Villanova secured a commitment. They got one from Wooga Poplar, the Miami transfer. He committed to Cal Neptune's Wildcats. He's going to be a 4th-year player. He started 65 times over the past 2 years at Miami. He was a starter on that Final Four team in 2023. Averaged 13.1 points, 4.8 rebounds, 2.1 assists last season, shot a little under 40% from three, 86% from the free throw line. So solid shooter, good player, nice pickup. Answer this one for me. Can Wooga Poplar help Cal Neptune get to the NCAA tournament for the first time next season? And if he doesn't, what does that mean for Cal Neptune?
He's going to have to. I think Neptune is of the understanding, as every Villanova fan is going to demand, he needs to make the tournament to hold on to his job there. This was, by the way, the Poplar stuff with Nova, that had been out there like a number of weeks. So good on Neptune for getting him. They needed it. He joined Tyler Perkins, who was a player at Penn, averaged 14 points. Jameer Brickus, who played at LaSalle. They haven't had a notable addition in the portal until Poplar. They have tried. They have absolutely tried on a number of guys, and they had Max Shulga from VCU. He committed, and then he doubled back and went back to VCU. But they lose. I mean, Justin Moore's gone. Mark Armstrong, which I think is secretly, like, for Nova fans, it's no secret, but if you haven't been really keeping track, like, Mark Armstrong opted to pursue a professional career. Man, that's a toughie.
We just did a thing.
I know. I almost put him in there.
I did. I went with him.
Oh, you did? Oh,
yeah.
I thought, frankly, I don't need to get too behind the weeds. I left it open because I figured you'd take Bronny James. So that's why I didn't take Bronny.
Just not to get too off subject, but with Bronny, it's like, I think he's going to end up on the Lakers. He'll be fine. He'll be fine. Mark Armstrong, he might end up on the Memphis Hustle. He might be playing 5 minutes from my house.
It's wild. And I've talked to Mark Armstrong a little bit. I've interviewed him before, and I thought that he would have a blossoming career at Nova, and the fact that he is gone is a major ding. They lost him. They lost obviously Tyler Burton, Hakeem Hart. All these guys are gone, and Villanova does not have, like, I'm going to speak on behalf of Parrish, they're nowhere near his consideration for top 25 and 1. Getting Poplar is just the start. It's going to be a huge lift, but it is, Villanova fans had been aching for any kind of notable, all right, what transfer of note, what top 80 name, top 100 name can we get here? They get Poplar. There's not a lot of transfers that are still out there. In fact, there's 3 notable ones, but I'll get to that after we talk about the next guy in terms of the buzz on those guys. But it was needed. And oh, by the way, connected to our discussion right off the top of the show, you see what Villanova had with a Hall of Fame coach who had won multiple national championships and who had long been pursued by the NBA. No doubt Hurley will be giving Jay a call if he hasn't already on all this stuff, because Jay never took that deal, although it was offered to him multiple times. You see what Villanova has been since then. And I'm not saying that fate awaits UConn for sure. I'm not saying that whatsoever, but it is one possibility. I mean, Villanova was riding as the best program. You can make the case that Villanova was the best performing program in men's Division I ball for the 2010s. And now here it is entering year 3 under Kyle Neptune and fighting for relevancy, struggling to try and be a team that matters nationally and is just trying to be a top half of the Big East kind of program. Big season up ahead. Poplar is big, but they still need more, or Neptune is going to have to pull off a coaching job that is similar to the one that got him this gig, and that was the huge turnaround in his one and only season at Fordham, which has historically been terrible in the A-10. He did a good enough job there, and he's going to have to try and tap into what he did at Fordham there with this Villanova roster, because right now that does not project as a top 50 team.
Yeah, year 1 at Villanova, he was 17-17, finished tied for 6th in the Big East. Year 2 at Villanova, 18-16, tied for 6th in the Big East. Missed the NCAA tournament both of those years, and that's the first time Villanova had missed back-to-back NCAA tournaments since 2003, 2004. So he's 35-33 in 2 years at Villanova, 20-20 in the Big East as a head coach, now 51-49 in 3 years. That first one at Fordham, the next 2 at Villanova. Just some more numbers on this stuff. Started 19th at KenPom in year 1 at Villanova, finished 51st. Started 23rd at KenPom in year 2 at Villanova, finished 37th. Again, back-to-back 6th-place finishes in the Big East. It is worth noting, I guess, just for the context, that Jay Wright did miss the NCAA tournament in each of his first 3 seasons at Villanova. But respectfully, Jay inherited a much different program than the one that was handed off to Kyle. Before Jay took over, Villanova had missed 2 straight NCAA tournaments and hadn't been to the Sweet 16 in 13 years. Before Kyle took over, Villanova had made 9 straight NCAA tournaments in a 10-year stretch. We had the gap. And that included 4 Sweet 16s, 3 Final Fours, and 2 national titles. So, he was handed a really nice thing, a preseason top 20 team, and it hasn't gone well. And to your point about they're nowhere close to my top 25-1 right now, like I've got in the top 25-1, UConn, Marquette, Creighton, Xavier, Providence in that order. If I extended it, I would have St. John's next. That means right now I have Villanova finishing no better than 7th in the Big East, and that I don't think that'll be good enough.
No, because 7th in the Big East almost certainly probably won't get you in the tournament next year. Never say never. You can get 7 in, but 7th in the Big East, he's got to make the tournament. And we'll get more on this in preseason stuff, but everyone knows the deal there. And many people have speculated to me that had he not gotten the endorsement and reinforcement from Jay Wright, then Villanova would have moved on. But he's given the leeway of 1 more year, and we'll see if he can do something. Again, Poplar's a good get, and I would assume we'll be handsomely paid at that as and good on him. And good for Nova there. The other one was Trevon Brazile returning to Arkansas. So there's 2 angles on this one. He's the one carryover from the Musselman era into the Calipari era. But Arkansas fans that have been tracking this closely most of you have probably put 2 and 2 together here. With Brazile back, does that mean that Coleman Hawkins is no longer coming to Fayetteville? That is my understanding for sure. We'll get to that in a second, though. On Brazile, this is a player who had such a good start 2 seasons ago that there started to be like, okay, you look at his size, he's got some shooting ability, he's got good athleticism, he's got real potential to be a first-round NBA pick. Then he got hurt, season was ended before they even got to mid-December, sat out that season. Then he played this past season and was, he was a good contributing piece. He didn't even average double figures. He averaged 8.6 points, but now he goes and joins a team that is going to have Jonas Adu in the portal, Adu Thiero via Kentucky in the portal, Zvonimir Visic via Kentucky, and then Janelle Davis and G.J. Wagner are going to be in the backcourt. That's going to be a fascinating combo in general. How Calipari manages that is something to keep an eye on. And then you got Boogie Flynn, Carter Knox coming in. It's a good piece of news for Arkansas fans. I can't say that Brazile coming back means that it makes your team better than had you been able to get Hawkins, but nonetheless, you got at least one of the 2, and that's a major add. He's the 9th scholarship player. Calipari has been vocal about this consistently, about maybe only having 8 or 9 players on scholarship, so maybe they are done. I'm impulse to say part of this is because Arkansas has been recognized in the sport as having the most aggressive NIL pursuits of players out there, with offers among all the players I just mentioned totaling north of $5 million, if not encroaching on $6 million or so. So maybe Jerry Jones will continue to write checks and all the Tyson family and all that stuff, but they might be running the war chest might be running a bit thin here. So that's as much of a thing as anything else. Let's be clear on this on Calipari and his roster limits. It's they have not been shy about being aggressive on the NIL market, and they wind up getting to keep Brazile to stay. And maybe ultimately he can turn back into that NBA level prospect that he was a couple years ago. And no doubt about it, Calipari's history and what he's been able to do and getting guys to the league was a significant factor in that decision.
I tell you, there is so much money connected. I don't mean to suggest Arkansas is a wealthy state, right? But like there's a lot of money connected to the University of Arkansas. And I don't know how much these people want to throw at it. Like they might just say, this is crazy. But just trust me when I tell you, there is no limit. I mean, they can throw whatever they want to at it. Like if they want, if John keeps going to them and saying, hey, for another $800,000, I can add another starter. It's not one of those things where they will ever say, we don't have that. They can say, we don't want to do that, but they got it. If
the limit doesn't exist.
I mean, obviously, how about this? If Arkansas wants to have the highest payroll, for lack of a better word, in college basketball every year, it can. If that's what it wants to do, it can do that. And I like the roster now. I mean, it is 4 guys. If you think Brazile is going to slide into that starting spot in the front court next to Adu, and then you go Flam, Wagner, Davis, it's 4 guys who have started, for NCAA tournament teams. Brazile played for an NCAA tournament team 2 years ago. Got hurt. You went through all that. You get the point. They got 4 high level, high major players who have accomplished things, and then a 5-star freshman in Boogie Flan, other 5-star freshmen coming off the bench. Like I've got them 13th in the top 25-1. That equates to 4th in the SEC, but I've got 5 SEC schools in the top 15 of the top 25 win one right now. In order, it would be Alabama, Auburn, Texas A&M, Arkansas, and Tennessee. So the league's going to be really, really tough. Alabama, I think, the favorite at this point, but it's not crazy to think John Calipari could. I don't think anybody's ever said this sentence before. You ready for this? It's not crazy to think John Calipari could pull a Danny Sprinkle. You think anybody's ever said that before?
Nope.
It's not crazy to think John Calipari could pull a Danny.
Not exactly
Sprinkle.
analogous.
Well, it would be this.
I know what it'd be.
At one point, he had nothing, and he built it into a conference champion. He could do that. I'm not predicting it, but that could be something that gets done here. Could be John Calipari could go down as a modern day Danny Sprinkle. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, how about that? As for Hawkins,
is John Calipari a modern day Danny Sprinkle? Is that a poll question?
It's not. As for Hawkins, he's one of 3 players that are top 100 level that are still uncommitted in the portal. He's going to visit Louisville this weekend, and it feels like it's either Louisville or Kansas State in the lead for Coleman Hawkins. And then
I don't get the sense that Coleman Hawkins would turn down the Lakers offer.
No, I don't think so. SMU and LSU, I've been told, are also in there a little bit behind. Apparently SMU, though, willing to come to the table with a lot of money there. SMU also maybe second or third place for Arthur Kaluma, who is considered to be a Memphis lean at this point. Also a notable transfer that is not yet committed. So we wait and see on that. But Memphis could indeed, and that would be a big get for Memphis. They lost David Jones to the draft.
Well, they got the David Jones money to spend now. That's what that is.
That is correct. So my expectation is Memphis for Arthur Kaluma at some point. Hawkins, Louisville, or K-State. And then Jameer Watkins is another top 100 name, all ACC honorable mention. St. John's, Michigan, maybe Florida State return. That's the buzz on those 3. Those are the 3 notable transfers that are top 100 level that are not committed, and some of the noise around them there. We'll see. We'll see what emanates and emerges there. I would think maybe Watkins. I guess Kaluma could happen at any point. I almost feel like Hawkins is going to be last in that, but we'll wait and see on that. But we are almost at the finish line with the notable transfers, and yet I say that. If Hurley goes to the Lakers, you could have another 2, 3, 4 guys. Aiden Mahaney, what does he go back in? I don't know, but we got to get to that point. Just if people are unaware of the rule, if you lose your coach, you are allowed 30 days to hop in the portal. Not to decide, you have 30 days from the day the coach leaves the school to then hop into the portal there. We'll deal with that if we even get to that point.
Hey, we mentioned NBA Finals starts tonight.
I want
to get your finals predictions before we get out of here.
That's what the people came for
very quickly. But first, I'm just generating revenue. Watch this. Another word from our partners.
Go.
Come on, Anderson.
An unsub, a seasoned one, and he's leaving a calling card.
How do we find a ghost? I have a plan.
Where's Anderson Cooper?
He left us. He's gone.
I knew it was a matter of time. I knew he wouldn't hang around these parts too long.
Yeah,
I knew he would. Hey, game 1 of the NBA Finals tonight, 8:30 Eastern. You can watch it. You can watch it on something other than America's most watched network, the network of stars. It's the Mavericks and the Celtics. The Celtics are the favorite, both in this game and in the series. And I got this email from Duke the other day. Doesn't matter who wins it, Mavericks or the Celtics. They're going to add another champion to the brotherhood. Either Derek Lively becomes an NBA champion or Jason Tatum becomes an NBA champion. Kyrie Irving, of course, already is one.
That's not trivia time.
Okay.
There's another school guaranteed to have an NBA champion amongst its ranks no matter who wins. What's the school?
UMass Lowell.
No, give me an actual guess here.
Well, I mean, can I look at a roster?
There are 2 of no. Don't. That's the whole point. Don't look at the roster. There are 2 schools.
Okay, Kentucky.
Is it Kentucky? They're not on one of my lists. I don't think so.
Okay, well, they got PJ Washington.
Yeah, but he's not. Didn't
he play at Kentucky?
Yes.
Okay.
There's no Kentucky player on the Celtics.
Well, that's a shame. That's a real shame.
Yeah.
Let's see here then.
One of the schools we have talked about on this show. Don't look at the chat.
Okay. One of the schools we've talked about on this show. Well, it's not UConn.
It's not UConn.
Is it Arkansas?
Ding, ding, ding.
Yes.
Jordan Walsh For the Celtics, Daniel Gafford. For the Mavs.
Yeah.
There's another one too. There's another one. You hate this school. You always have.
Oh, that's Marquette.
Correct. Can you name the players? No looking. Can you name the players?
The players.
You don't have a chance. You know the players. There's no chance you know this.
The players. The Marquette Golden Eagles, it should be Cam Jones, my little homie from Memphis. That's
not there. Omax Prosper is on the Mavs. Sam Hauser is on.
I know Sam Hauser's on the Celtics. I did not know Omax Prosper was on.
which is great, by the way. I got one more trivia time for you.
All right.
There's only one player. You can't count the international prospects because they're not rated.
Okay.
So Kristaps Porzingis, Neemias Keita, by the way, on the Celtics, had no idea. Doncic, Exum, they're international. They don't count. There's one player that was not ranked coming out of high school that will play in the finals, be on a finals roster. Can you name who it was? There's 5 5-stars for the Celtics, 5 5-stars for the Mavs, 6 4-stars for the Celtics, 5 4-stars for the Mavs, 1 3-star apiece for the Celtics and Mavs, and then there's one player who did not have a ranking coming out of high school.
What was Derek White coming out of high school?
He was not ranked.
Okay, that's what I thought.
The 3 stars, by the way, Luke Cornett. Where did he play? Where did Luke Cornett play?
Luke Cornett played it. Oh, I do know this one.
Come on now.
Luke Cornett.
You could, by the way, I hope everyone's playing along at home. The classic, where'd they go to college? Play this with my brothers all the time. Love it. Where did Luke Cornett play? Come on, man.
I know it, and I'll know it as soon as you say it, but I don't have it.
He's a Commodore.
He's a Vanderbilt Commodore.
He's a Vanderbilt Commodore. The other 3-star player that plays for the Mavs, I didn't realize this was the case after the fact. How about this? Tim Hardaway Jr. was a 3-star player coming out of high school.
Well, that's because those sons of players always get underrated.
People were saying Tim Hardaway Jr. had no business being drafted. He was the Bronny James of his era.
He's the Bronny James of his era.
Anyway, you wanted what? You want my pick? Wait, who's winning how many games? Is that what we're doing?
Who's winning in how many games? Yeah, let's do that.
How about you? I've been talking a bit here. You give me your prediction and the reasons why, then I'll fire off mine.
Okay. My prediction is Boston in 7. Jason Tatum, your finals MVP. I think I'm rooting for the Mavericks. I think I want to see Luka get this done and stake his claim as the face of basketball in this world. I would like to see Dallas win it. I think Boston wins it.
How many games?
7.
7. Boston in 7.
Although, like, Kyrie hitting a game winner at the Garden in Game 7 would be amazing. Amazing. But I don't think that'll happen. But it would be amazing.
Chat's telling me, who am I missing here? Chat's telling me Florida's got guys on both rosters. We got Al Horford for the Celtics, and then who on the Mavs played for Florida? Who am I missing here? They've got Gafford, Jones. AJ Lawson played at South Carolina. Powell was Stanford. Omax was Marquette. Josh Green with Arizona. Kyrie and Lively were Duke. Washington was Kentucky. Hardaway was Michigan. Who am I missing? Someone's telling me they got 2. I'm not seeing it. Anyway, I'm going to go
Alex Fudge.
Is Fudge on the roster? I don't think so. If he's on the roster, I don't have it. Okay, they're saying Alex Fudge.
Alex Fudge played 2 games for the Mavericks this season.
But is he on the playoff roster? That's the question. Fact check me in real time. If he's on the playoff roster, Eric Bossy did the whole thing. That's where I pulled it from. Shouts to Bossy. I will go. I'd like a competitive series, but I'm not picking it. I will say Celtics in 5.
Celtics in 5.
You got Celtics in 7. I'll go Celtics in 5. They're the UConn of the NBA. What do you want from me? They're really not, but in some ways they have been.
Right.
I think that Boston, someone that really knows their NBA stuff, I thought I heard this a couple times. I think Boston this season had the highest offensive efficiency in the regular season in the history of the NBA. So on that end of the floor, they were just dominant. And Mavs will have the best player on the floor, but I'll say the Celtics in their relative consistency over the regular season. I know they let down in some big games here, but what the hell? I was in that building for UConn. UConn was in this building. They won a couple of games there en route to a championship. I'll say the same thing happens. TD Garden Arena. Boston Celtics get it done in 5 games. Trivia time. If Boston wins, and I'll do this myself as well because I haven't looked it up. What NBA number championship will this be for the Celtics if they win?
It's like 17 or 18.
I think it's 18, but let me look right now. I want to say the Celtics and Lakers are tied for the most championships, 17 apiece. Most NBA championships. I love a trivia time in real time. It says Lakers with 15. Wikipedia. Here we go. List of NBA champions. Here we go. Can I get a better list than this? Here it is. 17. Give it to your boy. Come on now. Come on. Lakers and Celtics both have 17. Who is third?
I love that you're just playing trivia time by yourself and congratulating yourself.
Why not? Let's go.
Hey, why don't I get out of here? You could just play trivia time by yourself the rest of the day.
Oh, don't think that.
Who is third? Probably the Sixers.
Sixers only have 3 NBA championships.
Oh, then it's probably the it's probably the Bucks.
The Bucks?
I don't know. I'm just making things up.
Dude.
It's the Bulls.
The Bulls are 4th. They have 6. There's a team that has 7.
Oh yeah, that's the team was 7.
Let my shirt be your hint. Where is this band from?
San Francisco.
Yeah. What team has 7 championships?
The Golden State Warriors.
That's correct. The Warriors have.
Hey, I think I've been
7.
to Jerry Garcia's house or something in San Francisco.
Well, you weren't on the show, but this is I told I did it when I did the show and I talked about Walton. People were like, "Why isn't he wearing a dead shirt?" I said I didn't own one. I vowed that I would get one. So, man, my word, I said next pod that I would get a dead shirt. So I'm rocking a little.
I think I've been to that man's house.
Jerry Garcia.
Yeah, I think I stood in front of his house and somebody took a picture of me in front of his house. I think that's true.
Can I get? I might need you to dig up that picture. By the way,
I do. There's no chance I know where that picture's at.
If you somehow find it,
okay.
That would be wonderful. I think that's a show. I think you got to go in and do your other show.
Yeah, we just say a lot of the same stuff.
I know. How excited are you to go in and do the other show and say all this stuff?
That's my life. I just say stuff and then I go somewhere else and say it, and then I go somewhere else and say it. That's how I spend my days. Shouts to Devin Downey. Shouts to Chester, South Carolina. Shouts to Terry Teagle, legend. Huck Larnell. Thank you guys once again for watching, listening to the Eye on College Basketball Podcast. If you're not subscribed, please go subscribe anywhere you subscribe to podcasts, including Apple and Spotify. There's more of us than there are of them. That should be reflected in the comments. So do that, and we'll talk to you again real soon. Till then, take care.